Kent Myers.
I'm Mick Cornett, and it's time for the verdict.
As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crowe and Dunleavy Law Firm presents The Verdict, an objective discussion of contemporary legal issues hosted by Kent Myers. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma. And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett, and as always, I'm joined by one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, Kent Myers. Kent, today we're back talking about terrorism with a specific interest today on bioterrorism as it affects Oklahomans.
Yes, last show with these two same guests that we have today, Dr. Beitsch and Kenny Levit, we talked about terrorism in general and how we go about fighting it. Today we want to be a little more focused and talk about bioterrorism, anthrax, smallpox, water supply contamination, other flyovers with...
things we probably haven't even thought of.
Or thankfully, things that haven't happened yet. Yeah. But we want to see what our people that are in charge of these things are doing to try to protect us from it. For me, it's kind of an impossible issue. I wouldn't have the slightest idea how to take the first step in trying to protect the city of Oklahoma City or the city of Tulsa from any such attack. But these people know. They've been trained, they're experts, and thank goodness we have them.
How will Oklahomans guard against bioterrorism? This is The Verdict, and we'll be right back.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
I enrich our cultural landscape.
I help define our quality of life.
I am one of 4,000 artists in central Oklahoma who receive
support from Allied Arts, this community's united arts organization.
I am an allied artist.
In Oklahoma, there are more than 1,600 children waiting to be adopted. They're of all ages, and for many, home has been a source of pain and conflict. They've dreamed of finding a better life and a loving family. Consider adoption. For more information, call 1-877-OK-SWIFT or visit the website www.okdhs.org. Adopt. It may be the toughest job you'll ever love.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leading it 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go for it. Wiggins in to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce our special guest.
We are really pleased once again to have Dr. Leslie Beitsch on my right, the Commissioner of Health of the state of Oklahoma. And Dr. Beitsch, you now share the record with others, a couple of others, of having the most appearances on The Verdict, and we really are appreciative of you coming back.
Delighted to be here.
Dr. Beitsch is on the Governor's Task Force on terrorism and is a recognized expert in the bioterrorism effort and area. On my left, once again, we are glad to welcome Ken Levit, President of University of Oklahoma at Tulsa. formerly with the CIA, formerly with my law firm, and we practiced law together, and Yale and Brown graduate.
Right.
Glad to have you back.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Ken is the chairman of the Oklahoma Heartland Commission on Terrorism, Task Force on Terrorism, it is. We want to talk today about bioterrorism. We've spoken in a prior show about terrorism in general, but bioterrorism kind of put fear in everybody that added an extra layer of terror after 9/11. Dr. Beitsch, please tell us generally what is included within the term bioterrorism.
In the broadest sense, Kent, bioterrorism is using biological products, be it the organism itself, an organism like anthrax, or a toxin that it may produce, for example, botulinum toxin, to harm individuals or animals or products.
Well, it's apparently anthrax has been used. Are we aware, as we sit here today, are we aware of any other bioterrorist attacks since 9/11 that involve anything other than anthrax?
From the information that I have received in the months succeeding 9/11, no, we have not seen anything. But let me assure all your viewers that our agency, as part of our daily mission, is looking for any other potential organisms that are out there through disease reporting and surveillance systems.
Is there today an anthrax vaccine that can prevent someone from acquiring it if they would get exposed?
There is, and I think probably many of your viewers have read recently that there was a vaccine produced for the military some years ago that had actually been on hold for a while. They had some problems with the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, which licenses production of that vaccine. That was recently lifted, and CDC had offered that vaccine to mail workers, postal workers, and others who've been exposed. And I would not be surprised if the military doesn't resume that vaccination campaign for military members.
Let me harken back to my memory a little bit. I remember quite a furor about that vaccination, and many service members, armed service members, being unwilling to take it because of side effects or fear of what it might do to them. Have those side effects manifested themselves in the postal workers and so on?
I don't think very many people have opted for that vaccine so far, which is interesting to me. I would have thought we would have had a greater interest, again, given the events of September 11th. But I do think we'll see less complaints among the military recruits. Some were actually discharged for refusal to accept that vaccine. I think, again, at this point, everybody looks at this not as something that's an unlikely sort of out there issue, but a very realistic possibility, and it's to protect their health. But let me add,
yes,
anytime you have a very good product like a vaccine, there are adverse effects and impacts of that vaccine. And you've got to balance the issue of adverse effects with the benefit that you would receive from that vaccine, much like we talked about the legal constraints that we argue about within our system. So it's a delicate balance, and we're constantly weighing those things.
If we had a massive anthrax attack in Oklahoma today, is there enough vaccine on hand to take care of our citizens?
That's a great question. And I'm trying to imagine a scenario where we could deliver that level of risk to a number of people. And that would be a difficult thing to imagine. Where we would first respond would be to offer antibiotics to people exposed. And if that was the entire population of Oklahoma, there literally are mechanisms to assure that. We would have a certain period of time to begin to get them a number of different antibiotics that are effective against anthrax. And if necessary, we could call in the National Pharmaceutical Stockpile, which is this huge supply now that's in confidential locations around the country that was actually utilized in Washington, D.C. area after their response to anthrax in the Capitol and in the postal centers. And so that would be available to us as a resource. And then we would begin to assess people's individual needs for the vaccine. But if everybody in Oklahoma needed the vaccine at one time, I'm not sure what the stockpiles are, but it would probably be difficult to get it immediately. But now that the FDA license has been restored, ultimately I think that the answer to the question would be yes.
Ken, you've had CIA experience, and I know you've dealt with terrorism for a number of years. Who did this anthrax attack in the United States? Was it Osama bin Laden?
Well, obviously we're all on pins and needles trying to guess that fact, and everybody's waiting for the latest information from the Bureau, from the FBI and the CIA for their findings. I think more and more the intelligent people who are commenting about this seem to be suggesting that they believe it's not directly linked to 9/11 other than to sort of ride on that publicity.
Maybe 9/11 triggered it.
That is a possibility, and more I think the intelligent people who are writing about this or commenting seem to think that it's not international terrorism, but somebody domestically. One question that those looking at it have is that this toxin that was sent, the anthrax that was sent to Daschle and Leahy, not sure that the perpetrator really had any idea that the mail was going to go through the Brentwood facility and thus contaminate basically the entire federal government in Washington, D.C. That was a unfortunate secondary effect that this person or group of people may have enjoyed watching, but may not have been the intent.
Well, you were watching how America reacted to the anthrax. What surprised you, one way or the other?
Well, I think it was a wake-up call to the extent that a few number of cases can trigger a level of interest, excitement, avoid the P word, terror, that we all had to sit up and take notice for.
Was the media responsible in the way they handled it?
Well, I think this was new for us in many ways. I mean, we've heard of Shinrikyo in Japan. There's been a little experience in Oregon with this crazy cult once, but here it was in our shores, something that strikes deep in our psyche. Maybe next time, and I believe that we will face this again in some way. The reaction will be somewhat more muted or methodical, but this was right in our face, and it was a wake-up call, and there was quite a bit of alarm.
Let me jump in here and get us to a short break. We'll be right back with our guests. We're discussing bioterrorism, how it affects Oklahomans, and a reminder that you're watching The Verdict.
Campfire USA candy sale. Must be that time of year again.
Would you like to buy some Campfire USA candy?
Well, where does the money go?
Your support helps Campfire create fun, educational programs for us.
Oh, hi, Jasmine.
Hi, Mr. Higgins. Would you like to buy some Campfire USA candy to help us on our way to camp?
Sure, guys. You know this one.
For nearly a century, Campfire USA. Today's kids, tomorrow's leaders.
It's for the kids.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable, private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
Yesterday was plain awful.
You can say that again.
On Broadway is Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company.
Bringing our daughter here was one of the smartest things we've ever done.
I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot of confidence. They helped me develop talents I never knew I had.
And it's fun.
On Broadway, Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company. Now enrolling in Edmond. Call 330-CAST. That's 330-2278.
Every day, in state governments throughout the country, crucial decisions are being made that affect the lives of children and their families. But as this process takes place, children are often left voiceless. When these children raise their hands to be heard, is anyone listening? There are people listening. They are child advocates. Join us and raise your hand for kids.
Mick Cornett back on The Verdict along with Kent Myers. We're discussing bioterrorism in Oklahoma, or at least the issues that we should be worried about concerning Oklahoma and bioterrorism. Kent, where are we here in this show?
Well, we were talking when we quit about anthrax and bioterrorism. I want to ask each of our guests to go out on the limb a little bit, not personally, but simply based upon what their task force, their respective task force are thinking. And I'll start with Ken and then ask Dr. Beitsch to comment also. Should we expect another bioterrorist attack like the anthrax attack?
Well, I think the threat is serious enough that we have to treat the contingency as one that requires our preparation. I mean, we certainly know that these materials confiscated from Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and places around the world, that front and center of their efforts is the ability to develop and utilize biological and chemical weapons. So we know it's a chief objective of theirs. We also know, by the way, that they've had probably less success in their efforts to develop it than we might have thought from what what the information has been released publicly revealed. So this is a weapon of the future. There are other weapons of the future. Cyber terrorism, the ability to get into our information systems. We haven't even talked about that today. All these things are sort of, unfortunately,
he's politicking for a new show.
Well, your colleague David Edger, whom we've had on this show, I think talks about cyber terrorism.
And people are concerned about a digital Pearl Harbor. I mean, so there are threats of the future that we are just waking up to, and we had a wake-up call to bioterror, and it's right for us to be paying attention to it.
Let me change the question I'm going to ask you, because what he said...
I would have had to agree with it.
Good. Well, we'll consider that a yes. How much sophistication... You're a medical doctor, you're a commissioner of health. How much scientific sophistication was involved in the preparation of and the delivering of the anthrax vaccine? Anthrax virus.
Well, anthrax is a bacteria, but you're talking about in terms of preparing the specimen, putting it in the mail, and so on, a very sophisticated level of microbiology
it's not
background technique.
That they'd learn in an Al-Qaeda camp in
No,
Afghanistan.
it's not, and it's not even something the average medical student could perfect in the micro lab. I mean, this requires a very advanced sophistication, advanced technique, high quality labs of that aren't generally available. There are only a couple places in this state that could happen, and generally throughout the country there are very few areas where you can do it. And the likelihood is, someone who did this, I'm no expert on, from the CIA intelligence side, but likely this is somebody who has an advanced degree in microbiology, and there just aren't that many of them.
Ken, any indication that since it was so sophisticated, that there might be countries involved besides just individual terrorist cells?
Well, there was a lot of speculation initially. Former Director Woolsey was out there quite a bit about saying it was an Iraqi strain.
He was from Tulsa, wasn't he?
He is originally from Tulsa Central High School. But I just don't think we in the public have much visibility into this investigation in its current stage, and that's rightly so. And hopefully that's because they're hot on the trail.
What do you think about smallpox? How likely is that to be a problem for us?
I think smallpox is theoretically a problem. I think delivery of smallpox to impact a huge part of the population is a very difficult task, even more complicated than anthrax. However, the success, and if it is successful, starts a cascade of events that makes anthrax really look like a very small exercise.
Explain what you mean briefly.
Smallpox is a virus that is highly contagious. 90% of those who are exposed to it will become infected. And the ability to spread it, though, is very limited because the people who are infectious are very ill. And so they tend to be bedridden, confined to home. And so the ability to spread that virus among lots of other unsuspecting people is relatively limited. There's no perfected way to send a vial of smallpox so that it would infect large numbers of people at this point. Although I'm sure, from a bioterrorism perspective, there may be people looking at that. I would not be surprised. And from a defensive mode, there need to be people, research scientists, evaluating that as well.
Well, we do have a smallpox vaccine, do we not?
We do.
that with limited side effects, I would suspect.
There are some side effects. Again, one of those things where we balance the side effects of that vaccine versus the protection. And given today's events, no one is recommending that we vaccinate the entire country for smallpox. There would be, again, many untoward effects. But if the threat of smallpox becomes more real, we have in the pipeline now sufficient doses to actually vaccinate the entire country. And that should reassure our viewers today that ultimately that is the best protection in the event of exposure. But we're working to make sure it doesn't happen.
What else besides anthrax, smallpox should we be thinking about? What's the next term that's going to come up in bioterrorism that will surprise us all?
And quickly, Doctor, so we can get to a final
I
word.
think we need to be thinking about plague, which is an organism, of course, that spread panic in medieval times. We need to think about botulism and botulinum toxin, which can be spread through food and other means.
Let's wrap it up here by each of them giving a chance to spend 30 or 45 seconds telling the viewers what they'd most likely to tell them about their role in the fight against terrorism or any other comments you have on this subject.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on the show. As far as the international issue of bioterrorism and fighting it internationally, I think one important point for the public to have a good understanding of is that it's a particularly difficult fight to fight in other countries and for our country to gather intelligence on, because most of the facilities that are used to create these kinds of weapons are very small. It can be in the back room of an aspirin factory, essentially. To the world, it looks like it's just an aspirin plant, but the perpetrators in the back room are doing something quite nefarious. And then as far as Homeland Security goes, I think the real challenge that we face is to create an effort that's sustained over time. This can't be just sort of the issue of the year. We need to have a plan. I think it's important to coordinate our efforts through a Homeland Security coordinator who's a high-level official for the state of Oklahoma, who's looking at this year to year, working with people like Dr. Beitsch, working with the Commissioner of Public Safety to assess where we are and make incremental progress in an effective way.
Dr. Beitsch, 30 seconds or so.
I think the governor, through his task force, has taken a very responsible step in bringing together a number of people from around the state who are tasked with day-to-day response to events like bioterrorism. And I think we're going to develop a very reasonable plan, working very closely with the Homeland Security Task Force, that I think can make people in Oklahoma feel like their security is being protected, and in the event of a bioterrorism event, it will be as limited as is humanly possible.
Dr. Beitsch, thanks so much for coming back to our show.
My pleasure.
Ken, why don't you stick around? I want to ask you some questions about OU Tulsa.
Okay.
We'll be right back on The Verdict.
Hello, my name is Ted Smith. I'm president of the board of directors of the Oklahoma Disability Law Center. ODLC provides free legal services in civil matters to people with physical and mental disabilities.
I'm Mike Sykes, Vice President of ODLC. For more information, call 1-800-880-7755.
The Oklahoma Disability Law Center provides high-quality legal services to people with physical and mental disabilities.
Boy Scouts of America, where above all else, character counts.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
And we're back on The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Ken Levit stays out here.
Yes, President Levit.
Oh, is that right?
President of University of Oklahoma, Tulsa.
That's right.
President Levit.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been president of OU Tulsa?
Well, it's a relatively new experience for me. I've been at it now about 4 months, but it's been a terrific amount of fun and a great growth opportunity for the University of Oklahoma and for Tulsa.
If a student wants to attend OU Tulsa, why would they want to choose your institution? What do you have to offer?
Well, we are really focusing on graduate education. We do have a little bit of undergraduate, but the niche that OU in Tulsa is playing and the niche that President Bourne and the regents of OU have really carved out for it at this point is to focus on the high-impact programs that Tulsa really requires, northeastern Oklahoma requires, such as telecommunications, where we see a lot of growth in people coming back to the field to get masters in electrical engineering, telecom, but also in areas in which there is a great social need, for instance, for nurses, for pharmacists, the amount of vacancies, for instance, in nursing in northeastern Oklahoma and in pharmacists as our population ages is incredible. So the investment that the state is making and that the leadership of OU is making in these kind of programs in the Tulsa area make a great deal of sense for the university and for the state as a whole.
Well, can the student do 4 years at OU Tulsa?
In the graduate program, yes, those programs that are graduate. For instance, OU has long been in Tulsa in the health sciences field, particularly in the College of Medicine. About half of the MDs in the Tulsa area are trained from OU Tulsa, either the residency program or the College of Medicine. So in those programs like medicine, like pharmacy, like telecommunications, or allied health, or social work, it could be a 2-year program, it could be a 4-year program, and you can do the whole thing in Tulsa, and that's part of the exciting aspect of it.
How many students do you have?
We have about 1,100 graduate students, and as I said, we've been around for about 3 decades, but with the recent gift that we received 2 years ago from the Schusterman family, a $10 million gift, we were able to acquire the old Amico facility there, right in the heart of Tulsa at 41st and Yale.
The Schusterman campus, I guess.
The Schusterman campus is really the heart and soul of OU in Tulsa, and our brand is flying high, the flag is out there, people know us better than they've ever known us before, and the future is quite bright.
We've got time for you to give a web address if people want more information.
Sure, you can just go to the general OU.edu website, click on to Tulsa, enroll in our courses, examine what we're doing. It's a real opportunity for Tulsa and for the state.
OU.edu.
That's right.
Ken Levit, thanks for coming by.
Thank you very much.
And Kent and I'll be back next week with another edition of The Verdict. We'll see you then. This program was brought to you by Crow and Dunlevy, a professional corporation. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma.